Welcome, everybody. I am here today with Chris Santos.
Hello, everyone.
And some of you may recognize Chris. He plays the piano at the 5 and 9 o'clock service on Sundays. So I thought it'd be good if we could sit down and have a little chat with Chris and learn a little bit about him and about how he has a passion for music and for the liturgy and for, whatever else is going on in his life, which would be really cool to hear about. And so as we sort of begin this, I'd like to begin with a prayer. So we begin in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, we give you thanks for the gifts that you give to us, for the talents you give to us, for all your blessings that you give to us. We thank you for the parish of Holy Name and for the church. We ask, Lord, that you would use this resource and this conversation that we have for your glory and for the building up of your people, that we may indeed be an effective witness of the gospel according to your will and by your Holy Spirit. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Okay, so Chris, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, when people see me as the guy that plays music, it's not far from who it is that I actually am. Because in real life, I actually am a professional musician. I'm currently a freelancer in Calgary and the surrounding area. I do a mixture of performance and education in the city. Truth be told, piano actually isn't my main instrument. I do piano mostly as a hobby, and I sing as a hobby. My main profession is actually as a percussionist, as a classical percussionist. That was my education background. I graduated from the University of Calgary just a couple of years ago. I did a degree in percussion performance. So most of what I do as a job is actually on the classical side of things. So on the performance side of what I do, I'm involved with various orchestras in the city, including the Calgary Philharmonic Orchestra. I play with the Red Deer Symphony, and I'm also a regular member with the Rocky Mountain Symphony Orchestra. It's actually it's a brand new orchestra that was just formed a couple years ago, and so I was part of the sort of the initial group when the orchestra just started getting up and running. Aside from that, there's a lot of hired work. So if a group is doing a kind of a one-time performance, a lot of times I'll get hired for that. So sometimes if there's like a Broadway show that's doing a production, or if, let's say, during Christmas, there's a lot of Christmas shows that happen in December. There's a lot of Easter shows that happen around Easter, and so a lot of times I'll get hired for that. And so I get to travel around the city and around the southern Alberta quite a bit, whether it's touring with an orchestra or just performing in the various venues that we have in Calgary. Aside from the performing, I actually do a lot more education than performing. And so as an educator, I work with a lot of junior high and high school kids with their band programs. And so I'll get hired as a percussion clinician, where I get to teach kids how to play drums or how to play percussion. And sometimes if it's an older group, like a high school band, for example, I get to focus on working on like advanced techniques. So we go from the beginner stuff, where it kind of just teach them how to hold a drumstick or how to play a pair of cymbals properly, and then we get into more details, like how can we shape a musical phrase, or how can we teach them advanced techniques, how can we teach them sensitivity and musicianship. So mix of performing, a mix of teaching, and then there's also my roles at the church as well. So that's sort of what I do as a profession.
Wow, that's really cool. So really, your kind of more passion would be percussion.
Yeah, I mean that's my specialty. Truth be told, I don't actually consider myself a pianist in the classical sense. I actually don't really know how to play classical music all that much. I actually, because I started taking lessons back when I started taking music lessons when I was 6, and actually took organ lessons, but it wasn't really organ lessons as in playing like actual like classical organ that you would normally like hear, let's say by Bach, for example, like, Bach fugues, or Bach preludes. I did more of a sort of popular type of organ music. It's really, really popular, more so in Asian countries such as Japan, for example, where you have an organ and you create like different. There's like different sounds. You can almost create like an orchestra or a band using the organ with the different sounds that it creates. And so I grew up playing a lot of popular music, like Broadway shows. So I did a lot of medleys from like Andrew Lloyd Webber, so like the Phantom of the Opera, or other Broadway shows such as Evita, and so on and so forth. I probably do have some sort of, I might be able to pull up like an example of that, but I'll see if I can find it. But so I never really learned classical music like Mozart or Beethoven or Chopin when I was taking music lessons. And for me, learning piano was actually a consequence of being at the church. And I guess this kind of goes into my how I'm connected with Holy Name, because my family and we joined Holy Name. I can't really remember. It's either the late 90s or the early 2000s. I was really, really young, so I can't remember. It might have been late 90s. And I filled several roles at the church at the time. My oldest brother was actually a member of the 5 p.m. choir when I was younger. So when I was younger at Holy Name, I was an altar server for 2 years. So that was back in grade 4, because I think that's the first year that you can become an altar server. So I was an altar server for a couple of years, just got used to the different roles that altar servers do. I think my main role was actually setting up the altar and taking it down. For some reason, that was my role. I was a really, really small kid back then, and so the candles and the cross that the altar servers carry, they're actually quite heavy. And so when I was really, really young, like I didn't have the muscle strength to actually hold it. And so when I was trying to hold the candle, like it took every ounce of myself to actually hold it. And so when we were processing processing in and walking out of the church at the beginning and end, like normally I would be the one that just didn't hold anything, just because I couldn't actually physically hold it. So my job was actually just setting up and taking down the altar. After my altar serving days were done, I actually started doing the PowerPoint presentation, because I was a big computer guy, and so I ran the PowerPoint for about a year or so. And actually, I'm still kind of in that role, kind of just as a support guy. And then I joined the 5 p.m. choir in 2006, I believe. So that was back when the church had both an organ and a piano. So I played organ because that was my main instrument. And so when my brother left, because he moved up to Edmonton, I sort of had to fill in the role as director. And so as a consequence of that, I kind of had to learn how to play piano, which is was quite a bit different from organ in terms of how you play it. You're still playing like a keyboard, but the way that you play it and how you play it, it's a lot different. You also lose the function of your feet, because normally you have pedals to kind of play bass notes. So for me to like becoming a pianist, just kind of I was kind of forced into that role, to be perfectly honest. I actually didn't really have any interest in learning piano, but since I was forced into the directorship role, it's a lot easier to direct from the piano than it is from the organ, I found. So that eventually became my main instrument. And so to this day, since we just have a piano in the sanctuary, that's been the instrument that I use.
Oh, cool. So I mean, the piano can pretend to be an organ, though.
It can pretend. It's definitely not the same. And I've played the pipe organ at the St. Mary's Cathedral quite a number of times, and it's a completely different monster. And to be perfectly honest, like I'd rather play that, because it's so easy to create a good sound. I know that a lot of people will kind of compliment on my playing, but to be perfectly honest, there's a way to make something sound good without being overly complex or without having a lot of technical ability. So a lot of it has to do with the musicianship and how sensitive you can be to the music. And so in terms of like playing scales or playing runs, if you were to listen closely to the stuff that I do, I don't really do a lot of runs. I'm fairly simple when it comes to my style of playing. If you were to compare that to my older brother, who often plays during Christmas and Easter, he's the classically trained pianist. And so he has the technical ability and the dexterity to do a lot of the really challenging stuff that I'm unable to do.
Wow. So you've got quite a repertoire there. I mean, I don't know. Being forced to play the piano, I don't know. It's just, at least you've done an amazing job of it. I mean, sometimes I think we're our own worst critics, actually.
Mm-hmm. Oh, totally.
You know, right?
Yeah.
But there's two things that you said I want to pick. One is that you were sort of interested in technology and computers that came across to me. Mm-hmm. So I think you had mentioned like live streaming and video stuff. Have you done some of that, or?
That's actually one of the biggest passions that I have. Like I'm a huge tech guy. Anything technology related, I'm totally invested in. So I actually I built my first computer when I was 10. So when my family and I moved to our current house, there were a lot of garage sales happening in the area because we moved around the summertime. And so we saw these computers that were they were old computers from the 90s, and they were like $5, $10 like a pop. And so my brother and I, we bought, I think, 3 of these systems just to kind of see which parts were working. And so that's sort of how I got in my feet in when it came to computers. I figured out how computers work in terms from a hardware standpoint. So you're opening up the case and you're kind of seeing all the parts, which part goes where, which part does what's the function. And then eventually it got into building my brand new computer from scratch. And from there it got into more other technology related things, so video and audio, for example. I've been doing a lot of video and audio work since I was around 12, so it wasn't that long after I got my first computer, because I was always involved. I always loved just dabbling with a video camera that my family owned, whether it was just taking home videos around the house or just doing just random projects that kids do. And so when it came to video and audio work, I started doing a lot of video projects when I was a kid. Whenever you have a social studies assignment or an English assignment, you sometimes have the option of doing whatever project you want to do. So some people will do a skit. Some people will kind of do a presentation. For me, I always wanted to do a video project. And so between grade 7 and grade 9, I probably did about 10 video projects. All of my social studies assignments were kind of like a CBC Rick Mercer type video. Looking back at them, they weren't that good, but I learned how to use a video camera. I learned how to set color and set up different angles. I didn't really know about audio at that point because I didn't really have the equipment to do so, but I learned a lot just from doing this project, because you also have to learn the skill of how to do video editing, and video editing itself is it has its own set of challenges.
No kidding.
And how you can do it, that's really, it's how creative can you be when it comes to that. So and audio has been something that I've just recently been getting in. Is probably in the last 5 or 6 years or so. I mean, part of it has to do with just me being a musician and just having that ear for what sounds good, and how to make something sound good. So because so with audio work, I do a lot of just experimentation. So I have a lot of different types of microphones for different purposes, and try using them for different purposes, which works best for this circumstance, which works best for this other circumstance. So whether I'm doing like online teaching, whether I'm doing a podcast, whether I'm doing an interview style setup. There's, again, like audio, it's an art. There's so many ways of approaching it. There's so many ways of editing it. And really what it comes down to is, what sounds good to you. And then hopefully what sounds good to you will sound good to another person.
Yeah, I can relate to what you're talking about. And I could definitely disappear us down a rabbit hole in this conversation.
Oh, we can definitely go that way if you want.
Because that's when I grew up. I was doing the same thing. Only we had film back then, and I did film projects for English and go on and on and on. So I'd love if we could sit down and have a different conversation another time. But that's really interesting, fascinating. So I'd like to move then to all of these skills. How do you see these interests and your talents intersecting with your Catholic faith, and how that works itself out in the liturgy or in life in general?
Well, with most of my passions, for some reason, there's always been a role for me to fill in the church, and it's not just in the music side of things where I lead the congregation through the different parts of the Mass. I would say that that's my main role, but when it comes to troubleshooting, such as, let's say, getting the PowerPoint set up, or if there's an audio problem and Mark isn't there, I'm usually the second in line to kind of deal with that. And so what I found is that I've kind of developed or discovered my niche within the Holy Name community, and that I have these gifts, I have these talents, I have these passions, and I have these skills, and I'm actually able to use them to deliver the best possible experience for people at Holy Name. I'm really, really picky about details and creating the best possible product. And I guess that's me as an artist, and that when I'm playing music, I want to deliver the best possible experience for audiences, whether I'm playing like a Beethoven symphony or I'm doing a solo recital. And the same thing applies in the church. It's not a professional performance, because it's not really a performance. You're there to add to the liturgy, but at the same time, that professional musician, that professional inside of myself, wants to apply how I view kind of a professional performance to a liturgy. And I think that it's only led to giving the best possible, like the best of myself whenever I'm doing a Mass. And I think that really, really shows when, especially when it gets to like Christmas or Easter, because those are really, really the two big Masses of the year. And that, like, I don't want to just have a basic Mass when it comes to music. I really, really want to push myself to see how far can I go with just giving my all, because I know how much I can give. And then the same thing when it comes to like technical support. When I a lot of people will actually, anyone who goes to the 5 p.m. Mass, they know that they'll often see me either at the front with the choir, or I'm at the back with the technical crew. And so I know that, like, that's those are the two places where I belong in the church, because those are where those are the places that are most in tune with myself. And so I know that those are the two places where I can best serve the church.
Yeah, there's so many things that are going on, and especially now in these times when the church has been, challenged, let's put it that way.
Oh, totally. And to be perfectly like it's weird not being there on the weekends. Like, I remember it was like the first or the second week after the lockdown happened, where, like, I was talking to my parents, because we were both my parents and I, we were just at the at the dinner table that morning. I was just thinking, like, it's really weird to not be out this morning, because usually we're all gone Sunday morning. I'm at the church on Saturday evenings, and so it's definitely created it's almost like a new normal, where it's like, yeah, like there's I'm not doing anything on the weekends.
Yeah, it's really difficult. I think like I have the same kind of experience at the moment, where you're not saying mass at the altar at the church.
Mm-hmm.
It's very strange.
Mm-hmm.
And or I can find that Sunday I'm freer because, well, I don't have a set time to say mass.
Mm-hmm.
It's very strange. But at the same time, I think it's challenged the church along the lines of using technology.
Yeah.
And there's probably things that we could do to help
totally
enhance that.
Yeah. I mean, there's the whole idea of having an online presence. And I mean, time and time again, we've seen so many examples of like how big of a presence you can have just by simply being on the internet, whether you're live streaming or you're posting on YouTube or you're creating a podcast. Because with how globalized the world has become, simply doing something from Calgary, you can reach audiences from across the globe, and literally from the click of a button. And so, like, for example, like there's a lot of examples of various churches, not only in Calgary but around the world, where a small church in Calgary that has a congregation of, or a capacity of maybe 100 people, they're reaching members in Europe, they're reaching members in Asia, and from then you get a huge following. Where if the message of the pastor or the leader of that church resonates with people, regardless of where they are, they're going to continue to subscribe to that. So like, I think the idea of whether you're live streaming a mass or even just special services, like let's say you're live streaming a Christmas service or an Easter service, because a lot of times people are either away from home or they're at home, or they're back home for the holidays where they're away from their usual parish. They have a way to still connect with their communities that way.
Yeah, it's a actually amazing opportunity, and I think one of the positive things maybe coming out of this coronavirus is it's forced the church to move a little more into the 21st century.
Yeah, I agree.
As far as the technology goes, I've always sometimes I've said, we were great. We invented the book and we grabbed hold of electric lights, but after that, it was pretty much that's really interesting, and obviously we have people like you who are talented enough to actually help make it happen.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I've been working on over the past 2 months. I've actually because I stopped dabbling with video and audio as I got more busy with school, but since there's been so much free time, one of the things that I've been doing is just working on the different technology skills. So, for example, on Facebook, my brother and I we did a few kind of live stream recitals and concerts. One of them was for a fundraiser for one of the Filipino communities, and so it taught me how to work live sound and live video and how to do things in real time. Because doing things in real time is actually really, really difficult to do. Because when you record something to post later, you have all the time in the world to edit, to get the shot right, to do all those different, color changes and audio changes. When you're doing things live, like, that's it. And so you have to make sure that everything is right on the spot before you live stream it. And so, like the live streaming audio work, video work, that's probably been one of the major things that I've been doing over the past 2 weeks or 2 months.
Wow, cool. I mean, yeah, and that's I think this is going to really change the way we do things, and how it's going to come out in the wash. I'm not too sure, but I really am hopeful the church can respond, because, it's all about making known the gospel and getting it out in front of people, and in a way that they're willing to listen or able to listen, right?
Yeah.
Um,
And from I apologize to kind of going back to the technology thing, because that's sort of my specialty. But when it comes to delivering the best possible message, a lot of it has to do with just with the quality of how you deliver it. Because a lot of times, what I found is that if your video is not right, if your video is blurry, or if the audio is muddy, well, one, you can't deliver the impact of the impact of your message is diminished greatly. And we have probably one of the best guys in the province when it comes to audio, with Mark. And I've been talking quite a bit with Mark actually about just how we can improve things at Holy Name when it comes to sound and all that kind of stuff. And so I think that with the amount of talent that we have at Holy Name, I think that we could definitely, if we eventually get to the point where we live stream a mass, or we start releasing, different videos, like a video series or something like that, I think that we can actually deliver like a really, really good product that can best deliver the message that our leaders at Holy Name are trying to deliver.
Yeah, cool. I think that, yeah, that would be awesome, because I think I agree. One of the reasons why I wanted to do this kind of series was really to showcase various people from the parish, and because we see everybody on Sunday and sort of interact a little bit, but there's a whole world behind every person that you see, and a whole world of talent and life experience that I think we need to be able to harness for the gospel. And I think people are sometimes just waiting to be asked, but we just need to be aware and get beyond, being worried about just the Sunday service, and be concerned about how we're getting this message of the gospel out into the world, whether it's, from the church or just individually how we interact. Because I know for you, even as a musician, when you go out into the musical community, you're probably in the minority as far as being a Christian is concerned.
It's difficult to say, because actually a lot of definitely like Catholic and definitely Catholic, but for example, a lot of my musician friends, they work in their individual parishes. So actually I know a lot of the whether they're musical directors or they're instrumentalists at a lot of the parishes. So I mean there is a community of us, and actually a lot of big names in the choral, well, especially the choral part of Calgary. They're all involved with their own individual churches or parishes.
Oh, it's good to know. I mean, it's like interesting how God is working out there, because I think music, getting back to music, is really fundamental to even to a worship service, or helping us to commune with God, and to get sort of past the day and the life that we're coming from, to take a sigh and immerse ourselves in beauty.
And historically, a lot of the musical development in the first parts of Western music was actually because of the church. We wouldn't have the musical scales that we have. We wouldn't have a lot of the beautiful classical music that we have if it weren't for the church, because everything was either done for the sake of the church, or it was sponsored by the church, because the church, they wanted to have music that could display their devotion to God as best as possible. And so if it wasn't for the church, we wouldn't have music today. We wouldn't have music as it is today. So it's kind of an interesting fact when you look back historically, that is the connection between music and the church. Like, it is like they are tied together, which is why I think it's important that important to, like, as my role as musical director at Holy Name, that we have it, and that we have it, that we do a good job with it.
Well, you do a good job, because when I came to say Mass at Holy Name from time to time, it's always struck me that the music is well done, and that really helps. When you're saying Mass, if you kind of make a mistake, or the music can cover a lot.
I've made my own share of mistakes, so and like a musical mistake is easier to notice than a spoken mistake.
I was always trained in the military, when you do all your drill and all that kind of stuff, that if you make a mistake, just stay there.
Yeah.
Don't if you're in the wrong place, don't move.
Yeah.
If you do the wrong thing, just carry on and pretend it never happened.
Yeah.
And I do that all the time, and you know what? It works for the most part. Although occasionally somebody will notice.
Yeah.
But no, it's good. I really appreciate what the music and the talent that you bring to the church, and your background and the technology. And I'm hopeful, as we move forward prayerfully, that we can use more and more of the talents that you have. And if there's other parishioners out there that have the same kind of passion, we'd love to meet them, right?
Oh, totally.
And to work together to make something really special. I mean, Holy Name already is. I think every church actually is. God has a plan for. But
and like one of my favorite parts of Holy Name is definitely the community. And I think that through doing videos such as this, where we get to meet a lot of the parishioners, it just gives us a better sense of community, where we actually know more things about each other. Because like you said, a lot of times we only see these people once a week for an hour. A lot of times we're not actually interacting with them, because we only see them during the middle of the service. And so I think when we're doing things such as these videos, or if there are any other projects that we can get done through technology, I think that's probably the best way to go when it comes to strengthening the relationships that we have with the church.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. It's like there's so much we can do. So I think that we've probably been talking for a while now. So I think I want to say thank you to you, Chris, for
of course
what you bring to the church, and for serving God in the way that God has called you to serve Him, and for your music, especially because we hear that on Sunday by Sunday, or when we get back together again, we'll hear it.
Yeah, no, I'm really, really looking forward to it, because I've definitely missed it, and I'm scared that I'm going to forget the parts of the Mass and when to come in. So there might be a couple of mistakes first couple of weeks.
Okay, we'll be so happy to get together again. Mistakes won't matter, but they don't matter really anyway. But it'd be good to get together, and I think maybe push forward our technology and how we're doing our outreach, and really come alive for the gospel, musically, technology, and any other way God calls us. That from Holy Name we can become a place where we're known for people who come together as a community, who care about each other, and who then enable each other to do the things that God calls us to do for the sake of the gospel. So
definitely.
Thank you for your gifts, and thank you for being a member of Holy Name.
No problem. Thank you so much.
We'll speak again. Thanks.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.